Hello, St. Michael Resurrection and St. Anne parishioners, and welcome to Quick Things, which is the name I give to these weekly videos that I have done for a couple of years now at St. Anne's, and hopefully we'll provide a variation of these as we go ahead at Eastside Parish as well. I know I don't begin as pastor until July 4th, but there are a couple of things that I would like to share and answer some questions that people have had. Essentially, what Quick Things is a weekly review, quickly, hopefully, of things that are happening in the parish. And then often I'll talk about some other, maybe some bigger picture issues or things, topics in the community, in the larger church that are happening, globally, whatever. And also often what I really like to do is have conversations with different people, and it accompanies most frequently an email. So in the email is more information about what I talk about in the video. In the email that all of our parishioners are receiving, regardless of which parish you belong to, is a link to a conversation I did recently with Sister Lucy Nye, a school sister of Notre Dame who has just concluded ministry of several years along the border with Mexico. She's worked out of Douglas, Arizona. And so in the email, you can see a link. I'll give you a time where you can jump ahead in the video to find that conversation. It's a little lengthy, but I hope you might find it worth your while when you have a few minutes. Check out that conversation with Sister Lucy. Now, it gives you an idea for those at Resurrection at St. Michael of what I mean by a quick things conversation. I do want to review a few quick things that pertain to our parishes, fairly across the board, all three of us really, and then answer some questions regarding our transition. So the thumbnail to the video said, transition ahead is really underway, and I'll get to some of those questions in a minute. First of all, at St. Anne's this last week, and I gave kind of an emphatic plea for more ministers at Mass, and that a plea could have been offered at Resurrection at St. Michael as well. We are all in need of more readers, servers, Eucharistic ministers, ushers or welcome ministers, greeters, whatever we call them at the different places, cantors. We need ministers to help us worship. All of our parishes are in situations where we offer 4 masses on a weekend, the Eastside parishes and St. Anne. And that's just the way it is for now. But in addition to priests, we need lots of people to help provide those liturgies. So if you can respond in the emails, our email address, you can respond to an email address and give us your name, information, and we'll get you on track to join those ministries. So this isn't a luxury. We really need folks to step forward and take on and share these ministries. It's really a great privilege, all of them. And so we hope that you might respond to that. This is exclusive to Resurrection at St. Michael in that St. Anne parishioners are familiar with Inspired by the Spirit. A year ago, we were in the throes of that campaign. Most of the money raised in the St. Anne Inspired by the Spirit capital campaign was to help complete funding for the renovation of the church here at St. Anne. Resurrection and St. Michael are now in the midst of Inspired by the Spirit, the last group of parishes in the diocese to be part of this campaign. Both parishes have goals around little over $600,000, raising money for very important improvements at the parishes, air conditioning, heating improvements at St. Michael, the school building at St. Michael's, some very important exterior maintenance work, but expensive maintenance work at Resurrection. There are details about that and all of that in the campaign brochure. In the email is a link you can pledge online, remembering that this is a 5-year campaign. So you're asked to make a pledge now that you will pay out over 5 years. And so just to give some consideration to that, the important needs of our parishes as we maintain our facilities and hope to have a strong future as we go forth, in utilizing those facilities, but it's important that we take care of them now and not put off that maintenance too far into the future. So be attentive to the brochure. Again, you can pledge online, Resurrection and St. Michael parishioners to Inspired by the Spirit. St. Anne parishioners, you can do that too if you haven't pledged already. You can use the same link. Actually, there's not going to be a link in the St. Anne email because we've done the campaign. Anyway, if it applies, please be generous and pledge to Inspired by the Spirit. I want to make one last spoken appeal to Forgive Us This Day, which is a resource from Liturgical Press in Collegeville, Minnesota. It's a daily prayer resource, just excellent. There are copies, sample copies available at Resurrection in St. Michael's. So if you didn't take one already, please do. And you can join a parish subscription, which gives you about $10 off the regular fee. There's a large print edition. There's also a digital online edition of Give Us This Day. And email information is how to get that parish subscription is in the emails for all the parishes. On Thursday of this week, if you're seeing this in time, there is a blood drive, Thursday, June 8th. It's at St. Anne's, conducted by the Blood Center of North Central Wisconsin. The location doesn't matter, it's the cause that matters. They were looking for a place to have it. I said, sure, come and have it. It'll be from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can just drop in and give blood. An important pro-life activity. If you're able to do that, that would be a great thing to do. Remember that our parishes are all going to see the Brewers play the Cubs on July 6th. We've had a good early response to that. Information in the emails on that and how to reserve your spot in the email as well. We're nearing the end, well, still a ways away, a couple of weeks away from the end of the fiscal year, and all of our parishes have something in common, I'm afraid, and that is that we're about $30,000 more or less under our goal for parish giving for the fiscal year. If you're able to help make a little larger contribution than usual to help narrow that gap in our giving, that would be a wonderful thing to do. There's a link in all the emails from all the parishes to make a contribution online. You can make that added contribution online, or you can do that in the usual ways that you contribute to the parish. So again, just to call your attention to that, if you can help narrow that gap in giving, that would be a wonderful thing to do. So those are the quick thing announcements. There's more in the email. So again, check out that further information there. Now to answer some questions that I have heard, that others have heard, and that they think staff members and others who thought would be important to address. As we make the transition, we anticipate Father Al Sloviak joining us at St. Michael, St. Anne, and Resurrection as our associate pastor, and then my becoming pastor in addition to St. Anne of Pastor Resurrection and St. Michael's. So first of all, one question has been, how can Father Al, who's been a pastor at St. Mark's for 34 years, how can he suddenly become an associate pastor? Because the bishop named him the associate pastor, basically. After 34 years, he just celebrated 50 years of priesthood this past weekend. I think Saturday was the anniversary of his ordination. He wants to remain active in parish ministry, I think is what it comes down to, but he doesn't want to have all the responsibilities that come with being a pastor, primarily, I think, meetings and things like that. So what I hope is Father Al will be able to help us and do the things that he's most appreciated in terms of parish ministry, but in that role as an associate pastor. So not being the guy who has to always worry if the air conditioning's out in the school or the snow isn't cleared or whatever. So that's how, and this is not uncommon. It's not something we've experienced for a more seasoned, shall we say, a more seasoned priest is an associate pastor. We always think of associate pastors as being newly ordained and fresh out of the seminary. Well, that's not common in lots of other places. There often are priests who, for various reasons, are associate pastors. There are some priests in some dioceses who never are pastors. They're associate pastors and who contribute in very significant ways to the life of the larger church and, of course, to the parishes where they serve. So we look forward to having Father Al in this role. I think it will be a very important component of our making a strong effort in this new arrangement. So that's how that can happen. Another maybe related question is this temporary? So for example, will a new pastor be named 1 or 2 or whatever of these parishes in the near future, and certainly that is not the plan, and certainly I have no awareness of that. This isn't, I don't want to say permanent. All things maybe can be temporary in some way. Life itself, I guess, is temporary. But this is intended as a permanent arrangement. And so we go forward with that in mind. Who will have Mass when and where? Well, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think there will be some consistency as to whether Father Al is on the east side of the river or the west side of the river or vice versa. But I don't know that we intend to make a big deal about who's going to be where. We hope to have some continuity of our worship, and that we would worship at, that members of East Side parishes would worship at East Side parishes and members of St. Anne would worship at St. Anne, regardless of who the presider might be. And Father Al and I have talked, and I think we have a pretty similar idea as to how we approach Sunday worship, little quirky things that might be part of how we do things, and that we all bring a few of those to our experience of worship. So there really isn't an answer to who will be where, because we don't really know that. We'll figure that all out, but I don't know that that's going to be kind of like a regular feature in the bulletin as to who's going to be where. And I think we can become acclimated to that. Here's a more substantial question. Does this mean that our 3 parishes are being merged or being pushed into a process of what I prefer to call unification? Well, first of all, that doesn't happen well if it's something that's just suddenly forced upon us from above. My experience of 2 parishes in Stevens Point that did go through a unification process was that after several years, people realized that there would be great benefit in more collaboration. So from the beginning, there was some collaboration, and I would hope that we can do that too. While we're not in a process of merger or unification, I don't know that we all need to duplicate everything. That we need to have a Bible study here and have a Bible study here necessarily at the same time. Maybe we have one at Eastside parishes on a particular day and time, and one at St. Anne at a different day and time, and that we can invite people from the 3 parishes to be part of all of that. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to do that, but that would seem to make sense to me. Or if I do a book club discussion, which I've done, I kind of do it as a regular thing. Why wouldn't we invite everyone to be part of that book club discussion if people were interested in it? So I think there are things that we can do in collaboration as we have done in the past. So that's the thing. St. Anne, St. Michael, and Resurrection have done Lenten missions together in the past. There have been some youth ministry or religious ed things that have been done collaboratively in the past. So I think that stuff, I hopefully not only will continue, but we can expand upon that and build upon that. But that doesn't have anything to do with merging parishes or unification. Bishop Callahan has given no indication that that's his desire. I mean, I have shared in the bulletin the last couple of weeks in all the parish bulletins that in the Diocese of Madison, a very aggressive process of parish groupings and ultimately unifying those parishes and creating new parishes is underway, but that is not something that's happening here. And while I say that's not going to be happening, I don't necessarily know I don't think that's something we necessarily have to fear, even if it were, because those arrangements can be very productive, very life-giving in a way. They can add, I think what happened in Stevens Point was that the best of both of the parishes that went through the unification process really came to the top, and a much more alive, vibrant parish resulted. I wasn't there to experience it. I left a year after the unification, but I think that was really a very positive experience that occurred there. But that is not what we are underway to pursue here. Does this mean we're being merged? The answer is no. So another question is, does this mean everything is going to be done the St. Anne's way? So that's my own question, because when I was in Stevens Point, so I was pastor of Newman Parish for 18 years. And then I became pastor of St. Anne's Parish, or St. Stan's Parish, a much larger parish, but located in very close proximity to the Newman Parish center. And that was one of the questions that the pastoral council had: would everything be done the St. Anne's way? And I asked them what they meant by that. I don't remember what their answers were, but I said, no, those aren't really, would they be done the Newman way? I said, those aren't really the Newman way, those are the Father Tom way. And it had to do with maybe some things of how things that were done at Mass, how meetings were run. So for example, one of my ways is that pastoral council meetings, for example, don't go on all night. They last an hour. There's nothing we really can do in 2 hours or 3 hours that we can't do in 1 hour. Now you could say that that's a St. Anne's way. Well, no, it's really a Father Tom way. So I think we'll figure out what some of those are. And again, they're not that's like Father Al and I talked about some liturgical things and how we would proceed and some questions. We were pretty much in agreement on what those are. And some of those I don't even know are different than what you're used to. So you may not notice, but there may be little things that are done differently. And it's not a St. Anne's thing, it's a Father Tom thing, just as would be true with any new pastor who comes into a parish. There are little quirks or things that we're not blank slates when we come to a new parish. I mean, I've been a priest for 28 years, so it's not like I can just suddenly go into a different mold. I think we want to honor customs and traditions of parishes as well, but we also kind of are human and we bring our own, as I said, quirks. I don't know what better word there is for that. We bring our own little qualities to it. And so I imagine we'll see some of that over the next few months as well. Another question is, and a more practical one, is how do two people, Father Al and I, how do we serve 3 parishes? And how do we do that collaboratively? So for example, how is it if I live at St. Anne's and my primary office is at St. Anne's, that I won't be giving most of my attention to the people of St. Anne's? When I talked about this arrangement in Stevens Point, when I became pastor of St. Stan's, I was summoned, and that's really the best word that I can use to describe this meeting. It was not a necessarily pleasant experience, but I was summoned to the St. Stan's Pastoral Council meeting, and they had a list of questions and or demands depending on how you looked at it. And one of the demands was that I would provide them with a spreadsheet indicating how I would divide up my time between the 2 parishes on a daily and weekly basis. I said that was really impossible to do, but that what I would promise them is that I would give adequate time and effort to both parishes and all the responsibilities that are part of that. Now, they didn't like that answer, but I think in time they realized that their concerns were not valid, that I did give appropriate time and attention to the needs of both parishes. A lot of our time is spent by things that we can't plot out, such as funerals, for example, which just come up, or other needs of calls to anoint people or whatever. Those things we can't plot out on a spreadsheet. And I don't work that way. I think it's just a matter of we need to give our time and attention on any given day or any given hour at what needs that time and attention. There have been some air conditioning issues in the school at St. Michael's, so that's gotten some attention this week that wouldn't have normally happened. It was the last day of school last week, So that demanded some of my attention at St. Anne's that might not ordinarily have happened. On Friday, there were two funerals. One was at St. Anne's and one was a resurrection. So I guess that was a wash. We got half and half that day. It's just a matter of being diligent and attentive. And my experience also has shown that when time goes by and it seems that I haven't been giving enough attention to one parish or the other, there are folks who will make that known. And if that's done in a charitable manner, that's appreciated. And I guess if it's done non-charitably, it's appreciated in a different kind of way and might bring a response as well. So it's a good question. But as I said, it's not something you can really plot out or anticipate. It's more a matter of just being dedicated to addressing the responsibilities, the demands, the needs of all the parishes. And just as that can be a challenge, depending on how far we stretch ourselves in one parish, it's a challenge among three parishes. But again, with good staff and with other folks who assist in various aspects of parish life, I think it is very doable, and it will be doable. We will just make it work. It will be different. I mean, maybe that's another question. I think, and I stressed this when I made this first announcement at St. Anne's that this would be happening, is that folks at St. Anne's should just not presume that this doesn't affect them, because it will. There will be things I won't be able to do as I've done at St. Anne's. There may not be events I've always been present for that I will maybe not be able to be present for now. I mean, again, I'm not saying that. I'm going to try to address what needs to be addressed and to be present where I need to be present. But it should stand to reason that some of what I've done at St. Anne's, I may not be able to do it, or maybe I'd be able to do it in the same way or dedicate as much time to it. And maybe that could very well be okay. Maybe it'll be better that I have less involvement in some, whatever it might be. So it will be a work in progress, and but it is something that will affect all of us in terms of expectation of the pastor or the associate pastor, and maybe differences from how we've always perceived that, or how we've thought that has always been, which may not always be true, or how it should be. Again, I'm not anticipating anything in particular, but there may be some of those things that come along. So I hope that answers some of those questions. If there are others, send them along, email them to me, and I may address them or try to address them somehow in an email or in another video such as this. And again, I'll see, I don't know at this point if we'll be doing these weekly with Eastside parishes, but that's certainly a possibility. I have found it, I think folks have found it a good way to communicate. I can speak to things in a different way than you do in writing. Also, we don't have time to talk like this at Mass on Sunday. Oh my gosh, we'd be there all day, right? But it is nice to just have more of a conversational way to address some of these topics. So that's the quick things. That's the answers to questions, a review of some quick things that are happening in the parish. Friday of this week, we celebrate the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It is the last of the feasts or solemnities, the date of which is determined by the date of Easter. We begin that series of dates with Ash Wednesday, and now Sacred Heart of Jesus, which is the Friday 2 weeks after Pentecost, concludes that cycle. And I want to conclude with the collect, the opening prayer for the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on Friday, remembering that we will celebrate Mass on the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus at 7 a.m. at St. Anne and at 12:10 at Resurrection. God of love, you set your heart upon the least of nations, and in the heart of Jesus, you reveal your love to the nearest of children. Make us simple enough to receive your great love and strong enough to bear it to others. Grant this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God, ever and ever. Amen.